Welcome to the Fitness Industry Council of Canada webinar, the pulse of Canadian fitness business. Brought to you by our sponsors including Matrix, Isofit, Flip, Popeyes, Hexfit and Zoom Media.
Biggest game changers. So, without further ado, my very good friend, Monsieur Gabriel Hardy.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm super pleased to be with you today. It's been a while, almost a year now. But as you know, the fitness industry is really important. And I think we are on a tipping point right now where the solution for health is no longer to wait to be sick and then ask doctors to take care of us, is to take care of us ourselves. To be able to prevent instead of always waiting for the disease to come. And we have been working so hard as a fitness industry for many, many years to have this promotion or the ear from the government. And at one point, I think it was last year at HFA in the United States, during a conference, I said to all the world leaders that were there in different fitness associations across the world, around the world, that, you know, if you want to change policy, you have to go at one point and you know, present yourself as a potential MP and you know, invest yourself in politics, because obviously, like, the message of physical activity is an important message, but if you want to impact the policymaker, you have to maybe become one of them. And so this is what I did. It's a pleasure to represent the people from Montmorency-Charlevoix, which is the foundation riding of Canada and Quebec back to 1535 and 1603. So we have a long history here. But it's really important for me to be there on behalf of the people of my riding, but also on behalf of everybody that has the value to put exercise first, to make physical activity a solution, to push for more policies and more investment in our field. And I think, and I'm honest with you guys, I think we are part of the next movement for health in Canada. And this is the message I'm bringing. I did some, you know, speech in the parliament. I have asked a few questions also. I push for the importance of physical activity and the importance of our professional, because, you know, you want to improve your health. At one point, you have to go in and seek the guidance of a professional, and they are in our facility. So I'm super happy to now be in the parliament and represent everybody that has this in mind to put physical activity first. And it's a pleasure to be back with you today. I know Krissy is going to do an incredible job because she's everywhere in the world and working hard to you know, always bring the new stuff and the tendency and all the vibe, and she knows a lot, and she meets with a lot of CEO as well. So thanks Krissy, and there you are, guys. So thanks again for having me today, and have a great webinar.
Thanks, Gabriel.
Merci beaucoup, Gabriel. It's great to see you. Thank you for joining us today. And it is now my pleasure. We're thrilled to introduce our featured guest speaker and presenter for this webinar, Krissy Vann, a veteran communicator and a prominent voice in the Canadian fitness landscape. Krissy is the director of content and host and producer of All Things Fitness and Wellness, where I was pleased to be a recent guest of hers. So thank you for that opportunity, Krissy. Her mission is to amplify the message that exercise is medicine, and to bridge the gap between the fitness industry, the leaders, and the public. And without further ado, it is my sincere pleasure to turn things over to Krissy and Erin to get us started.
I'll just say a quick thank you for having me back. I'm going to say the classic thing everyone does this time of year. How is it December and we're doing this again? But we had so much fun last year. I'm really excited, and especially excited to talk about the momentum we're seeing in the fitness space around some of these conversations. So Erin, it's the thing that I never get to do. I'm going to let you drive the conversation.
I know. We had so much fun last year. It's like two journalists ripping off of one another. So yeah. I'm not going to do it on script necessarily, but we had like 35 questions that Zach and I narrowed down. So we're going to do this like rapid fire.
Yeah, we
So
narrowed it
Krissy,
down to 34, I think, right? Yeah.
so Krissy, at some point you have interviewed some of literally the top leaders in the world, the top thought leaders, the biggest shakers in this fitness industry. At what point was there a moment where you were like, this is the trend of 2025? This is what we're seeing everywhere. This has blown up.
I think the biggest trend is the one that should excite everyone that's in this conversation, and it's on our business side of the equation. The trend is that the industry itself isn't just back, it's clearly in a growth cycle. And that sentiment is vastly different from what I experienced in 2022 when I entered the arena. Everything was around recovery, rebuilding, still a very strong sentiment of uncertainty in the space. But in all the executive conversations I have, and one that stands out, just how you teed it up there, Erin, that's most notable, was in March of this year. I do a fitness business forecast very heavily in the financial forecasting of the industry. And one of my guests was Mark Mastroff, which, if you're not familiar in the room, he was the founder of 24-Hour Fitness, heavily involved in Crunch, UFC gyms. He has the pulse. And essentially was like, this is the year that the roller coaster ride starts to accelerate and speed up, and it's going to be a long, exciting ride. And we've seen evidence of that. You look at what happened with EOS Fitness in the States. They ended up having an acquisition for $1.5 billion. Planet Fitness executed its first price increase in 26 years and is continuing to see growth. So they wouldn't have taken that decision lightly by any means. They know there is appetite that's going to sustain that. We've seen HVLP continue to outperform throughout the year, particularly with younger demographics. So the tone is shifting from a language of recovery to a language of confidence. And I think that is what has ruled the conversation in 2025 throughout the business side of the fitness industry.
Well, as a good journalist, I'm going to come back to number 2 and go right into, let's talk about HVLP, because for some of those listening, it's a bit of the elephant in the room, right? Let's talk about whether or not this is a disruptive force in our industry or if it democratizes fitness for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely two sides of that coin. At the end of the day, there are players in this space that are multi-unit operators, and they have the financial capability to diversify their offerings. We're seeing many in this space now offering designated recovery zones. Maybe they're not part of the traditional base tier membership, but that's something that's accessible to their clientele. They also can take a little bit of that chunk of footprint out of the boutique space with diversifying their class options. So I think that pressure can be very real, especially in a geographic area if you're operating against some of these HVLP models. But that doesn't mean you can't win. I think what consumers are looking for is clarity in the positioning of your offering and community. And if you're able to be really clear about who you serve and who is being catered to come in your doors, I think that is something that can work alongside each other versus take chunk from business. But I definitely agree. It does put pressure on, but pressure makes diamonds. So I do think that if you're able to kind of lean into the sways of that pressure, there can be a lot of opportunity to really stand out, because more than ever, people are looking for third spaces in our communities. And I think that's where some of perhaps the smaller players can play an even bigger role. And I live in the city of Vancouver. I see successful examples of this all the time, but it requires a little bit of thinking outside of the box. Can you be same old all the time? It simply does not work, especially because of who we are serving at this point. With Gen Z being your biggest growing audience, they want diversity, they want change, they want inclusion, and we have to be able to deliver that on the other side.
It's interesting. I was reading an article about, I think many of us who follow the news threads about the investment that Equinox, for example, has made in longevity, and longevity being this big buzzword. But one article I was reading was that this is not an active aging seniors discussion. Longevity is across all demographics now. So can you talk a little bit about how longevity in 2025 entered the mainstream and what you're seeing?
Yeah, it's wild when you read about some of those $40,000 a month longevity memberships. I'm like, what am I doing wrong?
I know when I saw that, I used to work for Equinox. I was like, oh my gosh. Can you imagine the member expectation of paying $40,000?
And the thing is, they are serving a semblance of the population that's able to do that. But to your point, Erin, spend any time scrolling on social media, whether it be TikTok or Instagram Reels in the fitness space. And I think that people have become, it's kind of like different segments that, if you're on the older end of the spectrum, I would dare any of us in this room to either have a situation of ourselves or someone we love that has felt a little bit failed by the medical system at certain points in our life. And then at the other end of the spectrum, when you look at Gen Z, they look toward myself as a millennial or Gen Xers and think, why didn't you prioritize this? Because they're seeing people suffer from ailments that were highly preventable. So because of that, there is a stronger yearning for people that are hungry for information. And we're in an era that information is all available at people's fingertips. And as a result, that's why I think the longevity conversation has changed from when I get older to I want to plan now to how I can live longer, have health span. There's the huge movement of biohacking where people are getting hyper granular. Look at even in the longevity space, the movement that's happening now of people doing custom biomarkers and bringing it into training facilities and looking to hack their workouts around their specific profile of what is happening in their body. So I think we're just having more and more access to data on ourselves. People are hungry for that data, and it's becoming less of a luxury and more the everyday person is able to access this information. And when we talk about longevity, we can't talk about it without addressing what's happening in the space in regards to the GLP-1 conversation. In the longevity space, that's the biggest growing conversation. And the thing that has been most notable, and again, if you know people on any of these medications, this has probably happened. Started off in the beginning of the year. Well, Oprah talked about it a little bit, but people were still, there was a slight, and there shouldn't be, but a shame cloud around it, much like Botox in the early days. No one would talk about the fact that they're doing Botox. The stigma has lifted. It's in the mainstream conversation. And if you ask anybody about those medications, I think there's been a good job in regards to most people being aware that it causes muscle loss. And so us being those natural players in that space. So longevity is not going anywhere. Peptides, I mean, that's the next massive thing. So
we're going to get to the next. I've heard of peptides being the next thing that's coming down the wire. So let's get into that into the second half of this. But I think one key element, and it's not even an elephant in the room, it's the big, very heavy 5-ton animal, which is strength training, which we haven't even, I can't believe in 15 minutes of talking, we haven't talked about the behemoth of strength training and how that has impacted our industry as a whole and really our facilities. Because I know from Matrix, from our side of things, we have facilities that were 50% cardio and 50% strength, and they're now 75% strength and 25% cardio. Like, it is fundamentally changing the gym floor.
Yeah, without question. I think the difference, it's not a trend, it's a correction. Like, strength training has always been foundational. I think there's just way more education and awareness among more demographics as to how it actually benefits our lives. And again, social media has done a tremendous role in that. But I dare say, I did a story in 2022 with a gym in the UK. It pains me that I want to say the owner's name was Anna Jenkins. There we go. There it is. This was several years ago. But she actually had facilitated a photo shoot because at the time she could not find stock images on her website of older individuals lifting heavy weights. They were all just tiny pink dumbbells and things like that. So she ended up facilitating her own photo shoot to create stock images. That has changed already. There's no more segmentation that we're seeing in the gyms on the gym floor among who is using the strength training equipment. And I think that's the shift. There is just a greater awareness among the consumer, where I think the responsibility of operators is in the onboarding process. We cannot forget that when people come in your doors in this January surge, yeah, the era before was I'm going to hop on a treadmill and I'm going to press the green button that says quick start, and that's going to start my journey. And that's definitely not going to end in a story of member retention. Whereas now you have people walking in the door, they want to lift, they want strength training. And I think really educating your staff to help work with those new faces coming in the door to remove the barriers of intimidation amongst that equipment could go a very long way in seeing more people adhere to their routines because we want it. They're asking for it.
And I'll just
You know what?
interject before we go to the next question. It is so, in my opinion, refreshing to see this desire and passion for strength training. And I'll never forget, I gave a talk, it was 20 years ago, it was 2005, and it was talking about the value and benefits of strength training in cardiac rehab. And one of the cardiologists stood up and said, Zach, I don't want my patients bulking up for babes. That was a direct quote of what he had told me at the time. And so, it's so great to hear you, Krissy, indicate that, it's, our older adults that are also looking for strength training, because I think we all recognize the huge value and the link with longevity and, the functionality and the functional capabilities that it enables us to do, regardless of where we live, whether we're still at home or if we're in a nursing home, et cetera. So great to hear that trend is really kicking off.
And I'm going to add, Krissy, and I want your input on this. You spend a lot of time in the world of content. In fact, that anyone here could actually hire you to do some B2B content, some content creation as well. We had a facility in Halifax who got the Belt Squad, and we were going backwards and forwards on ways we could share content. And they said, we really want to shoot some how-to videos because a lot of people find it very intimidating. They see these plate-loaded machines, whether it's the hack, squat, 45-degree press, any of those, and they're like, those are not for me. And so I know that every single person on this call who owns a facility, you're struggling for content sometimes, right? Like you're trying to figure out what you're going to fill your Instagram and your Facebook and your YouTube and your LinkedIn with. I would say we need to, if we're going to destigmatize strength training and get our beginners in January into safe training environments, we have to show them how to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, even just leapfrogging off that point, I've been a self-professed gym rat for many decades. I've competed before, and there is equipment in my own gym that I have desire to use that they've brought in that I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure. So I think it's remembering to put yourself in the member's shoes, that even if you're not starting from zero, there is always that level. By being a wired human, we generally have some fear when there's change. And so just think of how big of a change and big of a shift. But I think the desire is there. There's more awareness than ever. And so just having it as an inclusive part of your infrastructure is going to be key for retention metrics.
So let's talk about something that didn't stick, something that like we were talking last year. Let's talk about some of the trends that maybe we're like, yeah, we thought it was going to be big, but it really wasn't.
Yeah, when you sent me this, I kind of like had a little mull over, and this may be a slightly non-traditional take because I think it's a trend. I just think it's a matter that we don't know how to utilize it well yet. Wearables, it's all you hear about, and everyone's getting them in all their gifts over the holiday season. And I think they're a key component. However, the main conversation I kept hearing is, yes, we have so much data. So much data. The people walking in your doors are literally on their wrists or on their fingertips, have everything that you could possibly need to know about them to help them on their member journey. But there's a disconnect in a lot of areas over how that integrates in your own systems and your fitness facility and how that's used. So I think it's one of those trends that isn't going away. I think there's just this messy middle that we're all navigating in between, into how do we utilize this well to actually move the needle and help with member retention and churn and all the rest of it. So I don't think it's a trend that's going to leave us, and I don't think it's a fizzle, but I just think it's not one that there's a bridge that's well scaffolded between your member and how it can change the member experience within your doors.
And that's sort of vital when you're looking at Gen Z, right? Because they're dialed into everything. So if you don't know how to connect with them on that level, that's going to be a retention point.
For sure.
All right. So what do you see? What's coming down? Let's grab the crystal ball. I think I used those exact words last year, Krissy. Let's grab the crystal ball. What's coming down? You mentioned peptides already. What do we get excited about for 2026?
I honestly think the main thing you should be excited about is the consumer mindset right now around community. I know that that sounds so unbelievably basic, and I live in a more, metropolitan city, so I'm seeing it happen in real time. Getting creative over ways that you can build your facilities into an extension of their social life is imperative, and the people that are doing it well are winning. People are starved for this right now. You have Gen Z, they are not going out to the bars. We've seen all the statistics around the reduction of consumption of alcohol and the lack of spaces for people to find community as a result. If you figure out a way to cultivate it in your doors, you are going to win. A great example I've seen are extensions from regular gym communities that have decided to have a run club. A dog walking group is something that my fitness facility has, and it is well attended. Yes, I know that run clubs are the new Tinder, but neither here nor there. It's a purpose is a purpose. If you're moving and falling in love, that's not a bad thing. On top of that, just like integrating unique, if you do classes, just kind of trying to personalize the experience. Like for us, there was a really popular DJ that sold out in minutes in Vancouver. So you saw people change class structures to specifically be all music around this DJ. So just being really aware of where your community's at and meeting them there, those are going to be the winners of 2026. I think being everything to everyone is going to be less viable. Clarity is going to win, like having a strong understanding of who you serve. And it's kind of where I started the conversation. If the message is muddied, unfortunately, those are going to be the ones that we see aren't going to survive. And at the end of the day, there is a ton of consolidation happening in the industry. Costs are heavy and all the rest of it. Like you have to be so clear over who you serve. But to go back to what you're saying, Erin, longevity, that conversation is not, I think, just like figuring out how to integrate it within scope of practice. Obviously, what we see happen in the States is very different to what we see happen in Canada. There's different regulations and things like that. But, Lifetime having their Miura longevity clinics, Equinox expanding their offerings, finding ways to be part of the holistic health continuum versus just a gym that people punch in, punch out of, that's going to continue to be explosive.
Yeah, we've obviously written a lot of content this year in FitBiz Weekly, and we position facilities in terms of strength training, but I wrote a lot about VO2 max as well, and the opportunities for fitness facilities to really dive into that and get granular on cardio health, longevity, and let's talk about active aging. I mean, the statistic is 1 in 4 Canadians by 2030 is going to be over the age of 60. So tapping into that market, what are you seeing globally? And how can Canadian operators really kind of take advantage of the fact that there are a lot of people in their 50s who are like, oh my gosh, I have to start moving.
Yeah, like one that I can't even believe I didn't say with just you saying that is the conversations right now about perimenopause and menopause. The fact that people are entering the conversation and even willing to have that publicly and share knowledge is huge. Like there are things that women go through that unfortunately have been shrouded. I mean, our whole lives we're taught the name of the game is shame. Thank goodness the next generation is slowly lifting that veil and it's a ripple effect. But I can't even enter a group chat in my own group chats that people aren't talking about these elements. And we're seeing supplement companies enter the arena. You're seeing more women aware that, oh my goodness, this is going to impact my bone density and therefore I need to work out. So having tailored programs around that as well, I think is something that certainly isn't just a Canadian movement. It's a global movement of, it's a population that's been heavily ignored their entire lives. And now they're speaking out loud saying, hey, this is where we're at in life and we'd like solutions. And shocking, the fitness industry is a very natural solution.
Let's expanding on sort of technology and wearables. There was at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of fear around AI, right? And I feel as though that it almost felt like this tsunami coming at us that ended up being this tiny little wave when it hit the shore, right? Of this fear of AI replacing trainers, AI AI content replacing what the gym can do. So can you talk a little bit about what we might be seeing in 2026 of how AI might present itself? It's not going away, that's for sure. So
No, and nor should you want it to, honestly. I think from back end side of operations, there are so many tools that can help streamline what you do. I mean, and that's the part. It's not, if you use AI, you know this. You cannot just eliminate a job. There needs to be human touch points at some point in these tools you're using. From the most basic, if you're looking at your marketing team, for content ideation, for doing research. I mean, even a tool as simple as a free chat GPT can be a partner in that. But then on the other side of things, to your point, Erin, there have been so many tools in regards to software for gym operations that have entered the arena, and like a massive influx that, yes, can be incredible partnerships when you think of having AI agents on your website that can help answer simple questions like, how do I sign up for a membership, and what time are you open, and is this class operating? You don't need a human that's answering the phone the whole time for that. But then on top of that, you want to make sure that you're really researching tools that you integrate into your tech stack. Like, even for member retention, there's incredible ones that have come into the arena that will predict churn before you're even aware of it, because the algorithms have studied these behavioral patterns. That is amazing. It's amazing that Sally, that goes to your spin class at 7, also has had an interest sometime to join her friend Jan in Pilates, and then it sends something to her when she's gone home on her phone and says, hey, we think you might be interested in this. Book the class here. Like, that exists now. But I think it's important to really research the tools, because there's a lot of amazing players out there. I think there was an influx of capital, so there's a lot of bad players out there. So making sure that you pick a partner that's willing to strongly explain how it will work in the back end of your business, and also integrate in your current tech stack, because I think that's where, for some operators, it's become really difficult, where you have this tool and this tool and this tool and this tool, all this amazing data, but are they actually all talking to each other? And then you just have a bit of a mess. So I think being very thoughtful, but AI is not something to balk at. Like, it is a partner. This is the best way that I think about it. It can be an exponent to your being. It can be an exponent to your operation, but it's not a replacement. Like the human touch point, even from a training perspective, I think it can be an exponent on our training and our trainers. But if you are a great personal trainer and doing your job and providing a 5-star customer service experience, there's no way that AI is going to replace you.
And that was that tsunami that was coming. We like, if you can have a trainer who can use AI to efficiently write programs, they're still delivering the program in that one-on-one session, right? But why are they wasting their time doing it sort of old school?
Totally.
One would say.
100%. And it's like, at the end of the day, we know if a program could just write up and your client would adhere and reach all their goals, well, we wouldn't see 95% of people this time of year be sad that they didn't meet their goals. It does not work that way. Unfortunately, human behavior is still going to be human behavior.
And I will hard sell our January webinar that no one wants to miss, because we're going to have Dr. Paul Bedford, who is our annual retention guru specialist, coming to talk to us in the middle of January. And he talks a lot about this, is that we think about this January surge and then people quitting. And he's like, that's not it, right? Is that people join 12 months of the year, and anyone who owns a facility knows that, right? But if you're not doing certain things right in those first 10 to 12 weeks, you will lose that new member.
Totally. Nobody's walked in to be like, I want to quit. That's,
yes.
I will bet my life that's been no one's goal when they've walked in the door.
Absolutely, right? And I remember working for Equinox, and people would get so upset in January because the classes were packed, and I'd be like, they will be gone by March. We don't want that in our industry. We want them to stay. We want everyone to stay. Let's talk about, and we've got Paula Comfort on here, so she might pipe in the chat. Let's talk about talent and leadership, and kind of some of the staffing and the challenges that are facing the fitness industry, and maybe some of the solutions that are coming in 2026.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I've definitely had conversations around this. It's not my personal area of expertise, but the sentiment is 100% there. And I don't think I've spoke with a single operator that isn't feeling the pinch of this, especially when it comes to like class instructors, for example. You know, there's a constant churn in that, unfortunately, and that can be really painful to an operator because we know, especially if people are moving around, your clients become very attached to who that is, and where they go, generally a lot of your members go at the same time. And then even just when it comes from a front desk perspective, everywhere is experiencing labor shortages. Investing in your people, imperative. I had a conversation. I work really closely with Chris Smith of Fitness World, and we were just talking about this the other day. And that's a huge pillar of his, continuing education and providing those opportunities. But not just that, having pathways built in your organization that people can grow their fitness careers. Nobody wants to feel as if they're in a dead end, especially when it comes if you're in a facility where you have a team of personal trainers. You know, a lot of the onus is on them to build their business. But at the same time, if you're not giving them pathways and tools to build their business, and I don't mean just certifications after certifications, like more education often isn't the problem out of the gate. It could be a communication thing. Maybe they need a little bit more mentorship about going out and meeting people on the gym floor. It can be as basic as that. So I think with the people that you have on your team, exploring ways to invest in them, and it may be as simple as a low-hanging fruit type of mentorship solution that could have a long-term gain. You know, it's not always about having tons of players on your team, but having a couple A-team players that are well motivated and well invested can go a long way for your bottom line. And then the other side of that equation is looking into some of these AI solutions, because at the end of the day, there are a lot that can not necessarily shrink your workforce, but mitigate some of those everyday tasks that are time sucking them. We don't need somebody. We're in the area that you don't need somebody that has to answer the phone all the time to say what time your opening hours are or what time this class is. So if you find ways to integrate solutions that kind of offload that so they can focus on things that are genuinely going to grow your bottom line.
Love that. Paula just added a card can make a big difference and a real performance appraisal. I think that's
Yes.
absolutely vital, right? Like you have to know where you're going in an
Mhm.
organization. There has to be a trajectory, right? Like as you just said, I think you used the word pathway. I think, and Paula just said, people want feedback. Yeah, you want to know that you're doing a good job. You know, Zach, you never tell. I'm just kidding.
But yeah, it's like you want to know that you're doing a good job. And I think, you know, some of the best mentors I have ever had are the ones that have been able to share my blind spots in a way that didn't feel threatening, but felt motivating. Like at the end of the day, especially the fact that they have chosen to work in the field of fitness, I think a byproduct of that is that you have people on your team that are more than likely growth mindset. So
Mhm.
that is something to really keep in mind. But you know as well as I do, if you are growth mindset, you are hungry for growth. And so you got to keep them hungry.
I love that. I love the expression
Mhm.
growth mindset. It's absolutely vital. So let's talk about growth. Let's talk about 2026 because it was really the last question was the untold story of 2026, which I'd like that to be a part A. What's the untold story? What haven't we heard about what's coming down? But let's talk about growth. Let's talk about how facilities, if they implement it now, if they start thinking about it, you know, if they do this, they will undoubtedly grow by December 2026.
Yeah, I think just the main untold story of 2026 is that the shift isn't a new modality. I think of this time last year and we were touting Pilates and touting strength and touting this. All of that is part of the equation.
Mhm.
But I think the industry is finally having success with the united messaging. I know in this arena, we say exercise is medicine, but on a broader digestible scale for the everyday consumer, how people relate to fitness is changing in real time, and the industry is prepared to meet them there. And you put that together, and I think that is why there is so much investor optimism in the space, because people are now seeking us as part of their health span plan, as part of their lifespan plan. And keeping your eye on the ball for that to be the messaging, having offerings that help them feel like they're moving toward that goal is where we're going to see the shift and difference in 2026. It's not going to be some grand modality or grand trend. I really think it is how people are actually relating to our spaces at this point in time, which is really exciting because I'm sure anyone that's sitting here knows just a couple of years ago, that shift wasn't apparent. Like COVID finally changed the focus to the mental health element. Beyond that, we had a loneliness epidemic declared, people wanting it for their social wellness, and everyone holding ground together, propelling like, hey, we're actually a huge solution for preventative healthcare that's not just physical, it's mental, it's social. Us getting more peers involved to stand behind that message, I think, is the big thing that will help everyone succeed. Because this is one of those examples that if you win, I win too kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like the tides all rise together.
And honestly, I think that I saw this on Dr. Mark Hyman's LinkedIn about the data from the US of like drinking is at its all-time lowest numbers, right? That we're seeing, the Friday night booze fests is the Friday night DJs in a club, in a gym and the parties. So looking at health through the lens of, I don't like to use the word holistic, but the multiple planes of health.
Yeah, well, and I think like the biggest thing that anyone here can do legitimately to grow, and I've seen this on both sides of the border. I've been on Capitol Hill for a lot of the advocacy work with the HFA for some of their fly-ins. It's quite literally connecting with your peers to help everyone come together. Like you asked, Erin, about what's happening globally. There are movements in literally every company. And I think that there's a lot of optimism from a policy side and for members in those seats that are actually listening to this message. And there's way more data being provided from organizations like yours, from the HFA, that are actually amplifying these messages at this point in time. But I think there's still a lot of work that can be done to get peers united under that. And not just that, but your members. Your members can be your biggest advocates as well. And if we keep kind of rowing in that direction, then perhaps some of these policy changes that can make strong, meaningful change, not just from a population side and making them healthier, but at the end of the day, you're all in business for a reason. It is to have financial success and improve an ROI. You're just lucky to be in an industry that ultimately helps change people's lives for the positive. So I think that could be the biggest win. And now we're at a point where the awareness of the messaging is no longer the problem. That's happened. That's happened in real time. Look at all the top trends that are coming out in the articles as we roll into 2026. Now it's about getting more people to elevate that to the finish line.
I love that. And it's interesting because Gabriel Hardy and I were talking about that when, the latest report came out about Canadians being inactive, and he said something very profound. It's like we have a common enemy, and that's physical inactivity, right? And that is also the common thread that will make every single fitness business in Canada and around the world thrive. Right, is not only more members with paying dues, members staying longer, and members actually changing their lives. I have a virtual fitness business, and I say to people, it's the best business ever because you're going to be my members forever. Or there's always going to be someone that needs to be served in the exercise as medicine movement. So I get very excited about that.
That's not fair. Gabriel has a dog. Pure jealousy.
He does. I know. Look at that. Look at that adorable little doggy. Well, I think we should, Zach, open it up to, did you see the way I rapid fire went through 10 questions?
I had no confidence, to be honest, that we would make it through all of our questions.
Erin and I come from the land of sound bites.
Yes,
yeah, we're like,
and I even went on some tangents, but landed the plane.
I thought that was great. We did a survey of our members about a month and a half ago, asking a number of questions related to, the state of the industry in Canada. And one of the things that came back, we had a question about what emerging, and I'm just reading off my other screen, what emerging fitness trends do you anticipate will drive the greatest opportunity and ROI for your business in 2026? And so this was a question that we asked our Fitness Industry Council of Canada members, and the top three really align closely, Krissy, with what you've said. So, the first one being wellness, integration, and mental health programming. That was number one. Secondly, functional fitness. And third, active aging. So those were the things that our members were telling us. But what I also found interesting, and Erin and I have chatted about this a number of times, is we also got double confirmation from our members in this survey that they're seeing less and less interest and engagement with spin classes and less activity that is driving them there, which is partly why, when I identified ISOFIT as one of our sponsors earlier in this introduction, I really see ISOFIT as a potential partner that can fill some of those facility spaces that are dedicated to spin classes. And, you could think about, facilities that have TRX type of training and other functional fitness. We've speculated as to why we think spin classes may have been on the decline, and whether that's because everybody invested in Peloton bikes for their own homes a few years ago when you couldn't go anywhere. But we're kind of curious, do you have any insight as to what might be driving that? You talked earlier about the greater interest in strength training. And, why are we losing, ground in the area of spin classes that are instructor led in the actual fitness studios or facilities themselves?
Yeah, I mean, this would be speculative, but two thoughts come to mind. And the first one is exactly, I think there is that shift to, if I'm going to dedicate myself to a group class experience, I perhaps might be shifting to a more group fitness experience that's going to have a strength training element. And so spin class being so heavily cardio driven, that could be where people then are making a shift to that allocation of time. And I think a lot of facilities, I mean, this is different. If you're just a spin studio, then you're really needing to nail the community element for people coming in your doors. But if you're a model that has multi-class formats, I mean, I always see the small group training floor now packed every time. When there's ones, I haven't done it in years, so it's the Les Mills modality. I think it was body pump back in the day, but classes that kind of emulate that format are always packed on the gym floor. So a guess could be that if people have only so many hours to work out, perhaps that's the shift. And then the other component, I think, might come down to the community side. Like, out of all the things you could choose to do in a group fitness thing, spin is a little bit more you against you, like often in a dark room, just kind of like yourself and the bike. And yeah, you might high five again, but it has a little less of that community touch. And there's an underlying insane craving for people to want to feel like they're really part of something right now. They're starved for it, which is crazy because we're more connected than ever, but we're also the most disconnected than we've ever been as a human race, especially now with AI. My goodness, it's a curse and a blessing.
Person. No, I wasn't sure if Rebecca had raised her hand. There was a wave going on. So Rebecca, I had asked you to unmute. And if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. We're a pretty warm bunch here at the FIC, that's for sure. But if no one has any questions, or I'm gonna pause on that one. Paula's been adding, so she just added in several cycling brands have added weights to their classes, and it's true.
Yeah.
So yeah, which is I mean, I still am a spin instructor. I still love spinning. So
and of course, I think we'd be remiss not to mention high rocks, right? And the emergence of new competition, types of format in terms of training that integrate both cardio and strength together.
They grew 432%, I think it was.
Oof.
I cannot remember what article it was, but it was recent and reputable. But yeah, I actually interviewed their chief operating officer in 2022, Jacob Tilley, and it was before they had crossed the water because they're based in Germany. And I remember him like still being in this ideation of, I hope that it takes off, and we're planning to go to the United States, and it's wild. We're about to have our first High Rocks race in Vancouver this weekend, and it's dominated the fitness conversations here. And even on the gym floor, like my gym doesn't have a designated, because I know that you can put a specific High Rocks affiliate in your gym. That's part of their business model. But even without that, you can tell they've structured things based on those training for the events.
Paula did have a question here, Krissy. She said, what consolidation do you predict for 2026?
I will not profess to pretend that I am an investor or anything like that on that side. I mean, I think that there's just, I mean, one thing that you're noticing are a lot of groups that are buying up like big chunks of franchise groups and just making themselves bigger and bigger. We just saw EOS Fitness take over. It was a big one because it was the Gold's Gym locations in Southern California, which that was a big move. So who knows what's happening, but I do know there's a lot of interest from PE firms and venture capital that are pumping money into the equation. So
Yeah, that's what the
exactly.
psychologist said that. So, well, I've written, I think, about community. I think that is the biggest thread. Like, I'm like, this is going to be the buzzword of 2026 is community, 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 right? If you create a community, people will want to belong to it. And when people want to belong, people stay
Yeah,
and
I
they'll
think
strength train.
yeah, somebody that said it well, it was like when they're willing to buy your sweater or your t-shirt of your brand, it's like you've got them because they're so
Oh,
proud to be like, I'm a part of that.
this is an interesting one from Rebecca. She said she's in the US. Since Krissy works with political thought leaders, how does our messaging combat the anti-science and blatantly anti-exercise national leaders who do not recognize exercise's value? Ooh, that's big. Yeah.
I can tell you this. I have, as they say, been on the ground in Capitol Hill many times. I think like 4 or 5 fly-ins. And there has not been one where, I mean, I literally am on the sidelines when I'm in there for the record. I've been gathering content anytime that I've been in those rooms, but being a witness to the conversation of people sitting across members of Congress on either side of the floor, and not one person has actually come up to say that exercise is not a benefit. Like that has never happened. Generally, it comes down to like more so issues of like in this case of the states, it's for HFA and FSA accounts, and not everybody has access to that. So they kind of the cop out is, well, if it's not for everyone, then we're not going to do it, kind of thing. But I have actually not seen anyone successfully argue that movement and exercise is not a positive. I think the issue, of course, is there's lobbyists from places that make a lot of money based on sick care, and they have very robust budgets, and you're coming
Mhm.
against that, and that is a very real reality. But people have been hard pressed to say that movement and exercise is not a benefit. That's not, there's not one time that I've been there and they've had that rebuttal. It all really comes down to dollars and cents.
Now, Gabriel Hardy has his hand up, so I'm going to ask him to unmute. Might be fitting to have Mr. Hardy have the last word here.
So thank you very much. I hope my car is getting the sound right. Sorry,
Oh, it's
I
perfect.
changed place. It's perfect. Okay, so in politics, I think, and Zach was there a few weeks ago. The message is passing pretty well. So more and more and more politicians, but senators as well. You know, in Canada we have the Senate and we have the House of Commons, and we were around a table with the Olympic Committee. And I think we were 15 senators. I was the only one from House of Commons, but everybody around the table had data pointing out that physical activity was an important solution for our nation. And it was from $1 invested, come back $3 to 20 to 13. And I was with Minister Van Coverden a few weeks ago, and you know, we had meetings. He said it's renowned that $13 is coming back from every dollar that we invest. So at the end of the day, like, it's coming more and more and more common for people to support physical activity as a solution. And everything related to physical activity, to strain, to VO2 max, to all of this is becoming more common knowledge. So now we don't have to convince anymore. We just have to make that, you know, policy, that new policy pointing out or pushing for more physical activity, subsidies, investment, tax credit, or whatever. And you know, like, this is what I'm working on behind the scene. And I'm really feeling that we are on the edge of tipping on the other side. You know, like, the evidence is there, everybody approved. Now it's just for, you know, general population to value it enough so policy are actually becoming real. And this is the push we have to do from inside.
Krissy, if I'm not mistaken, Gabriel's comments there remind me of something I think I said on your podcast a week or two ago about we don't need any more scientific data to prove that exercise is beneficial for virtually everything. So, it's time, we need to collectively support Gabriel and support him in his work in Ottawa. These are very important policy actions that Gabriel is pushing for with regards to, tax reform. I regularly comment on how we seem to have inconsistencies nationally with regards to how we treat the application of tax. For example, when we all go and buy fruit and vegetables, which we all know is good and healthy for us and supports healthy behavior with regards to nutrition, we don't pay GST, PST, or HST on that. But when you go to the gym, you do. And so there's an inconsistency there. But we are also continuing to have conversations with regards to recognizing by the CRA investments that we make in ourselves to be healthier. And, it's great that we see this community interest in longevity and health span and well-being and wellness. But I think we all recognize that if you want to start saving for your retirement, you can't start when you're 64. And if we want to invest in our health, we also can't wait that long either. Unfortunately, it doesn't come naturally to a lot of folks, and the data that we've got from our good friends at the HFA, and I see Anton is here, the Portis report on price elasticity highlighted that the number one barrier for Canadians in particular to not go and attend fitness facilities was not because they didn't have enough time. It was because of money, because of cost. And so, this is why we need strong leaders and advocates in positions of government like Gabriel. We are so grateful that we have a strong voice in Ottawa to advocate for these interests. So, when we look at the data again from Anton, we know that Canadians that do have a gym membership, they're 80% more likely to achieve the Canadian physical activity guidelines compared to those that don't. So it makes a difference. And, we need to keep pushing. We need to make it more accessible because fitness facilities, they're so linked with health outcomes, and we need to get, better recognition of that reality.
Well, on that note, I want to thank Krissy Vann for this incredible conversation. And if anyone has any other additional questions, they can email us. We can forward them to Krissy. And it was once again, Krissy, you're down for it every December, my friend. It's
Well,
it's one of my
you.
favorite conversations of the year because I find it that we just get so much information in 1 hour. So I want to thank you for taking your time, and for all of you. We will have our next webinar in the middle of January with Dr. Paul Bedford. Do sign up for that. It is going to be never a sellout because it's Zoom, but it is a fantastic way for you guys to get all of your retention pieces lined up in a row. So without further ado, happy holidays, everybody from FIC.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays. Enjoy your holidays, whatever you celebrate. Thank you for joining us today.
All right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.